Hello and welcome to the Being Human podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Bottaro, and today I've got a really special episode. I'm sharing with you another one of our graduates from our CPMAP certification program. Beth Carrell is one of the most fascinating people. Her story is incredible, and she's suffered incredible loss. Also, she's made some mistakes in her life. She's a great example of how we say God writes straight with crooked lines. And so her past is colorful and she's come through it a bit and she's here to talk about it. She wants to share with us the lessons she's learned, and she wants to bring together a really great resolution of God's grace, how we have hope in God's grace. And especially during this month of the Sacred Heart, where we're talking about the ways in which God enters into our humanity, messiness and all, to bring us to something better. And this is really this deepest dimension of the Sacred Heart, how much God loves us, that his entering in is motivated by love, and he's drawing us out of ourselves in our imperfection into himself in love, in his perfection. And it's, sometimes we talk about that, it could sound really abstract, really over spiritualized, until we actually apply it to the nitty gritty and the messiness of real stories of real people's lives. And so Beth now is doing amazing things, sharing God's grace, returning that mercy, letting it flow through her to others through the mentorship that we offer at Catholic Psych. But more than that, I think it's just a beautiful story of hope. And it's a great introduction to more of what we're going to be sharing at the Summit of Integration coming up June 20th to 22nd. And we'll have links to that as well. We have some resources. We talk here about some pretty heavy stuff. So just as a little bit of a warning, and also to know that we break open the topic of suicide. There will be resources in the show notes for people who are struggling with thoughts of suicide, for people who are struggling with having lost a loved one to suicide, as well as our mentorship. We have free consultations that we'll, again, link to in the show notes here. If you want to talk about what sort of service or resource you might need, even if it's not to work directly with, one of our mentors or psychotherapy, but maybe just to get a good handle on what could be helpful for you, we're happy to have that conversation. And so those links are here in the notes as well. So I hope this blesses you. And until next time, please keep us and all of the great work of the students, the mentors, the graduates in your prayers. God bless you. I spent the last 10 years learning how to help people using the best techniques available in psychology integrated with the Catholic faith. Now we've figured out that there's a better way to help people than just slapping a Catholic label on the same secular model of therapy you find anywhere else. The real question is, how will we make this shift to a new model of truly Catholic accompaniment, keeping the psychological sciences in mind while opening up to a more human and more effective approach? This podcast is here to give you the answer. Join me and follow along as I take you behind the scenes of what this new model looks like, using recorded audio from sessions working with my team, with colleagues, and even directly with clients. My name is Dr. Greg Bottaro, and I want to welcome you to the Being Human podcast. All right, so here we go. Welcome.
Thank you.
Beth, it's so good to see you here. I'm excited for this opportunity. I love bringing partners and Catholic Psych people onto the show and opening up all different dimensions of ideas that are very deeply connected to what I talk about on a daily basis and normal basis here on the show, but often it just gets kind of boring through the same old perspective, and at least it's boring for myself. So I like to listen to other people who have a lot to say about related things. So first of all, maybe just introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're coming from, where you live, family, sort of ground us a bit in context of who you are.
Yeah. Well, I'm a mother of 12, been married for 26 years, divorced from my husband for 3 of those years civilly. Um, and I was a teen mom. I did not come from a religious background. So I was a convert about 18 years ago. And yeah.
And that was how many years into marriage?
Let's see, about 4.
And so I mean, right off the bat, your one-liner
Yeah.
elevator pitch introduction is already turning some heads, I'm sure. So did you say 12 kids?
Yes, 12, 2 on the other side, 10 still here. One of them is my stepson, but of course, claim him as my own. So, yeah,
Okay, beautiful. So 12 years
12 kids.
I'm sorry, 12 kids
Uh,
in how many years?
26.
26 years.
Yeah.
Okay. But the first 4 you were not in the faith. Tell us how and when you
Yeah.
came into the faith.
Yeah. Well, I really, I was raised in a home that my parents were awesome and well meaning, but just, basically, as long as you don't hurt anyone, you know, uh, then you're okay to do what you want to do with your life. Self determination just comes from what you want. And so, but that quickly, in my 20s, I realized that's not true. Like I exhausted everything the world had to offer me, and got to a point where I felt so utterly lonely that I said my first prayer, and
Mm.
God answered it immediately. And yeah, I said, God, if you're real, help me. And I went back inside my house and did the whole open the Bible thing. And it said, I'll make your path straight. I'll treat you as a son, and it really hit.
And where did you grow up?
Helena, Montana. And I'm still here. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what was it like in the community where you grew up? Whether was religion not really much of a thing? Is it still not?
Well, no, it's a beautiful Catholic community. We didn't come from that background at all. My family, just totally secular. Um, I don't think there's been any Catholics in our line at all. So
Hmm.
yeah. So I mean, I heard of Jesus one time at Christmas in second grade in the bathroom at school, but I didn't. That I kind of looked, and thought, what does that mean? But yeah, so I didn't know Jesus at all until I was 24.
Wow. Okay. And how many kids did you have at that point?
2. So my husband and I got pregnant in high school, and
Yep.
I actually landed in a Planned Parenthood clinic where they showed me a video of 2 possible outcomes. One, my life would be great if I aborted the child. The other, my life would be destroyed if I, kept the baby. So, but
Oh
then
my gosh.
that night I went to my friend's mom. I went to my friend's house, and her mom said to me, well, it sounds like you're a mom now. And that
Hmm.
hit me and as true. And I was like, oh yeah, no, I am. So I couldn't ignore that at all. And so we have our 26-year-old son. He's wonderful. And yeah,
So then and then you got married. How old were you when you got married?
we got married. We picked out a Methodist church. I was 17. And we picked it because I had gone to a summer camp there with them one
Hmm.
year. So, just kind of pick it, get married.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? And it's actually right across the street from our cathedral, too, funnily enough. But
Oh wow.
yeah, so we got married, but we were just like ships in the night. My husband played football at Carroll College here, and I just bartended and waited tables. So we swapped kids, and then yeah, but I had an affair with my boss when my second son was born
Hmm.
at work, and it was awful. And I was just again, that was the beginning of my really trying to discover, is there anything in the world that can fill me up? And I realized no, there's not. So, um, and I
It was
actually,
in the aftermath of the affair.
yeah, yeah, it was, just a lot of partying and hedonistic lifestyle, working in the bars and all of that. So, um, But I started dating a Catholic guy, and he was young, so he wasn't necessarily devout, but his mom was. And so she said, well, certainly you can't date this woman because she's divorced and she would need an annulment. So I actually just marched into the cathedral and demanded an answer. Like, what does the church have to say about the state of my marriage? And the Monsignor there was so beautiful. He received me with so much love, and I'm sure I was really difficult, to deal with. But he kind of invited me to RCIA along with giving me the annulment paperwork. And all I remember is just his beauty and his warmth and love. So that was the only invitation I needed. And then once I found out that what the church teaches on the Eucharist, I was home. And I broke up with that guy and decided to reclaim my marriage.
That's such a 12-hour conversation. We should probably.
And my parents converted too after that.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So you're living a crazy lifestyle.
Yeah.
You have an affair with your boss.
Yes.
There's in the aftermath. Did you get divorced right away, or how did that happen?
I insisted on it. I couldn't face what, I just was like, close the door. I have to be, I can't see it. That I knew in my heart, I think on some level that what I was doing was incredibly wrong, but I had a lot of people affirming me like, you got to do what you got to do to be happy. That kind of thing. Mm-hmm.
And what was your husband thinking or doing or saying during this time?
He was devastated, he was trying to work it out with me, but I was just refusing to allow for it. Oh. So yeah. So a few years went by and he fathered a son, and then I became Catholic and said, we need to work on this. And so that's why I'm working on a forgiveness course right now with Jack, because my husband forgave me and continues to.
Yeah, wow. It's such a beautiful sharing of mercy.
Yeah.
And, so much to be said here. I mean, we're going to dig into this a little bit more. But the beginning of this conversation, we started talking about doing an episode in reference to the month of the Sacred Heart and talking about the mercy of God.
Yeah.
And of course, his mercy has a part and plays a story and enlightens every one of our stories.
That's right.
But really, really just a beautiful articulation of what God has done for you and what you want to turn around and do for others.
Right.
And, you have just such a close experience of receiving that mercy and forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
So in that time when you were away, first of all, you were partying, living this lifestyle. You already said you kind of felt like something was missing. You knew you were alone. You felt lonely. It was out of that. But what was it like to sort of begin thinking about the reconnection? I would just imagine there seems to be a chasm there that's so far that can't be crossed. Did you think about that at all? Were you afraid that there wouldn't be forgiveness, or what did you feel like as you were reclaiming, as you said, reclaiming your marriage?
Well, Dr. Greg, I have these experiences where when I know that I need to do something and it's kind of spiritual in nature, I know. So I just I realized, in RCIA and through learning about the teachings of the church, the truth about contraceptives, reading Humanae Vitae, I was just I just knew I must at least try to reclaim my marriage. And my husband was not, in a serious relationship or anything. So I didn't see any reason why not to, and no, I didn't hesitate at all. I just tried really hard.
What was his response? Was he trying to reclaim, reconnect with you during that time as well? Did he give up hope, or had he not given up hope?
He had given up hope. I just tried to show him, through actions of love, through just that I that I meant it. And it was just, obviously it took a long time for him to really believe that. And years, truly, because of course, parts of him were still so wounded by that anything triggering would be scary, even after a conversion of faith. So, yeah.
And had you guys gotten therapy during that time, or how did you get the support that you needed to kind of work through that, or for him as well?
No, not really. No therapy. Actually, I was Catholic. In about 4 years after I converted, he did too, through an experience with Father Stuart Long that he had at a Cursillo, the late great Father Stu, and he was so beautiful. So he was the reason for my husband's conversion, the Holy Spirit and Father Stu. So I think just the church has been the best place for us. We've tried therapy, reading books, things like that, but nothing stuck, nothing hit, nothing helped really. So,
What was it about Father Stu?
His reverence for the Eucharist. I mean, the effort that it took for him to raise the Eucharist was incredible. And to watch his reverence and love, it was obviously Jesus. And my husband had a bit of a Protestant background when he was little, but that was all he needed to see. Yeah. And so, yeah, just the sacraments have been what has carried us through until really this last year with Catholic Psych has been like a profound change for our family in growing in knowledge.
How so?
Learning about how we, like, for me, I would always spiritually bypass in dealing with any problem. And so growing in an understanding of the human person through the lens of JP2 and being able to, and even for my husband, I mean, I'm guilty of trying to, beat people over the head with what I'm learning, but just even in just like the teachings of the complementarity of the marriage, the mutual submission, the procreative nature of what our relationship is meant to be like, just the stuff that's laying around on my counters and the things I'm watching, my family's picking up on, through Catholic Psych. And so it's not anything I'm doing. In fact, I'm an obstacle most of the time. But yeah, so it's everything that you've done, really.
Well, so you've come through our certification program.
Yes.
And you obviously making a lot of connections for yourself personally, but then obviously it's a certification for being able to offer mentorship and support to other people who are suffering. So what's that been like for you?
It's been the job I've always wanted and never had. I mean, really, just even the background in bartending itself is like, I have stories, just really spending a lot of time with people. And unfortunately, in some cases, it's daily. But, just seeing the pain and the wounds, and to know that it is possible to know ourselves so that we can determine ourselves is just so wonderful to be with people in. And I can be in those dark spaces because I've lived a life of sin, and I've been through incredible devastation as well.
Yeah, people, it's funny because I did a lot of training and work in the restaurant business when I was in high school and college, and even in grad school. So I spent probably, I don't know, 10 or 12 years working in the restaurant industry, and I spent a good number of years bartending.
Yeah.
And I always kind of thought, that would be a cool second profession. And just seeing that human dynamic, that human dimension of it, just really connecting with people. We sometimes joke about opening up a Catholic Psych coffee shop down the road. And I think a little bistro, maybe a little pub connected to it. But we, it is this place of encounter. It's this place of accompaniment, all these, catchphrases that we love to use now. And so you had a lot of these seeds in place. You've had a lot of experience.
Right.
Now, we had a little conversation before this episode, and you were concerned about what we're going to talk about. Tell me, unpack that a little bit, and let's go there for a minute.
Well, because of the The difficulties in my life, we always think about when we're accompanying people, self, disclosure and all of that, because we never want our clients to take care of us, right? We're there to take care of them and walk with them. But it is so important to see that we all need support and community to heal, Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the concern. It's like if you bring up some
Yeah.
of these things from your past and some of these issues you've been through, like if there's anybody that would be maybe your current clients or people in the future that, this goes online, this lives forever, as they say.
That's right.
And you're sharing these parts of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Now that becomes a known narrative. And, what is it like then for somebody who's going to hear that, who you're helping them?
Right.
And it puts them in a position, the fear would be, which is a very understandable part of you.
Yeah.
And really all of us in a healing position to, really care for the sort of mindset and the disposition of the people that we're trying to help.
Right.
And we want to safeguard that boundary really well, because there's a really important boundary that if we're not using the relationship to have our own needs met.
Right.
And that's a really important point of consideration for disclosure, which is that fancy psychobabble term for how much does the therapist tell about themselves in that therapeutic dynamic.
Right.
And this goes for pastoral counseling. This is a really good principle for priests, and or people in spiritual direction or people in ministry. That another fancy psychobabble term that we use is power differential. And we always recognize that there's a power differential when somebody comes to ask for help, or if somebody offers help. There's this immediate implicit structure to the dynamic of the relationship. And what I mean, if I say to somebody, how can I help you? There's this underlying offer that's coming from a position of strength to a person in need. It's not a mutual relationship dynamic.
Right.
So it's not like, hey, do you want to go catch a movie? Hey, do you want to go grab a drink? Hey, do you want to go hit some golf balls? Hey, do you want to go, play some tennis? Like all of those offers have a mutuality to it of a sort of an equal ground that two people are on. Whereas when you say, how can I help you? Automatically there's this differential of, and it's not to say that you're sort of in different places in life,
right?
But there's what we call the power differential. And so then the context of that relationship and the kind of conversation that's happening within that context, if you're the person who's in the position of strength, you have an ethical responsibility to hold that position well and to take care of the other person and not do something that you should know because you offered to help in the first place would actually not help the other person.
Right.
So that's all the frame behind, and to sort of give the foundation for people listening of why this is really such an important consideration. Oh, and we're going to bring this back around to the Sacred Heart here in a minute. Interestingly enough, if you can believe it, we will get there. But through these like really sort of technical, ethical considerations for the healing profession, we have to also recognize at the same time that we are human.
Yeah.
So we have wounds. We have backstories.
Yeah.
We have sins that we've committed in our past, imperfections. And so then the question becomes, well, is there a place for using the things that have happened to us in our life as part of the therapeutic healing process?
Right.
So, this is where, and, I don't know if you've either been tempted to this before, or if you've felt yourself doing this, or maybe you've heard other people doing this, but it's very easy when somebody's struggling, going through something, and you're walking with them, for you to make reference to how you've been through that before,
Oh yeah,
and this is how you've handled it, right?
100%.
So it's like if somebody else, cheated on a spouse.
Sure.
I mean, I think that's a great example because I think there are, I think there are as many variations and reasons and context to that experience as there are times that it happened to people in those experiences. In other words, it's not exactly a one size fit all kind of experience, right?
Right.
So you can't really apply
Mm-mm.
your own experience and the details of what you went through to what somebody else went through.
No.
But I don't know. Do you ever feel like that? Like, does that come up as like maybe part of you feels like, oh, this is easy? If somebody was like away from the faith, cheated on their spouse, and then
Yeah.
now they want to get back together.
Yeah. 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 Turn on Dr. Laura Schlesinger from the past. I mean, she was the first one that even mentioned, that I should, but no, I totally understand what you're saying. And we are all experiencing our own situation, our own wounds from our own schools of love. And so just walking with people is really just an exploration of how they're, managing it. How can we help them to get to know themselves so that they can possess themselves and make their own determinations about how they want to move forward? There's not a one size fits all remedy for every situation. No. Yeah.
Yeah. So then how can you think about the fact that you just disclosed publicly? I mean, you've already talked about this publicly before. This is not like the first time that this has ever been talked about, but
That's true.
You did just go through this experience now, and now there's like another outlet where more people can hear this is what actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
So now how do you process that? What are you thinking about?
It's actually very fine because I'm not wearing the hat of taking care of you, Dr. Greg, right now. So I can just, be freely to talk about my own wounds, my own places of pain. Yeah. Here.
And what about somebody who comes up? What if you have a client now that comes up? This happens all the time. So the more clients you get,
Yeah.
and the more public things you do, then people will say, "Oh, I heard you talking about this on the podcast." And sometimes you have to remember, oh yeah, there's a lot of people listening sometimes that.
Yeah.
So what if one of your clients comes up to you and says, "Oh yeah, I didn't realize this about your past," or whatever?
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful because then we get to process what's happening between us in the relationship in that moment. And each client is going to be different in their response to that. And so it actually can deepen our relationship.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, it is. It's going to be very different. And it really just comes down to you holding the space in that moment with that person in that context. Yeah. And do you have the control over that structure, like over that sort of atmosphere of the conversation?
Right. Yeah.
Father Sam is another one of our partners here and our mentors, and he talks about how he learned in seminary, and learning how to do spiritual direction, this very same principle, and they learned it, and the priest teaching the principle said that it comes down to the basic question: in the midst of a conversation, you should be able to ask yourself, whose needs are being met right now?
Ah, beautiful.
It's super simple.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, okay, so maybe this happened to you. Maybe you have this experience. Maybe you might even talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Even in a mentorship or spiritual direction or therapy sort of experience. But it should always be that it's the other person's needs being met.
Right.
By having that conversation at that point.
Yeah.
There's times when I've thought I was connecting with somebody on something that I had been through. And, I start talking and realize pretty quickly I'm kind of losing this person. Here's an example. I recently was talking to somebody who had also left the Franciscans, and they had left a different order. And I was sort of immediately thought we had this bridge of connection.
Sure, yeah.
And it was something like, yeah, and then this happens, and then and and then all of a sudden, and then I saw the look on his face. It was like,
That's not what happened.
we're not in the same conversation right now.
Yeah.
Now, if that happened with somebody that was a client,
Mm-hmm.
then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, wait a minute, my needs are not being, or his needs are not being met by continuing this conversation right now. If it's like I have an outlet where I need to just relive my nostalgia,
Right.
that's not serving this person.
Right. And it's true, like, especially with like being an adult convert and having like Jesus come into my like life drenched in mortal sin and being like, that's not going to be the same spiritual experience for all of my clients, you know? So having the
Yes.
ability to understand, yeah, how to see that each person's spirituality is unique and should be reverenced. Yeah. So I hear you.
Well, and so this is the challenge, because there's in Jesus entering into your life,
Mm-hmm.
there's the model and example for us to follow.
Yeah.
And what we do as mentors is we try to enter into the lives of the people that we're walking with on some level.
Right.
But we do it following Jesus, and he doesn't enter entirely into our life,
Right.
because as scripture tells us, he was like us in all things but sin.
Yeah.
So he entered into your life drenched in mortal sin, as you
Right.
said, but he was not actually experiencing
Right.
sinning.
Right. Right.
So and we talk about this in the model as having one foot on the shore, one foot in the water. If somebody's drowning and you want to save them,
Mm-hmm.
you might have to get a little wet. You have to put one foot in the water.
Yeah.
But you don't want to put 2 feet in the water, because you end up swept away. You're going to drown and not be in a position to help them at all. But you can't keep both feet out of the water either.
Mm-mm.
So we have to put one foot in, keep one foot out, and then we can actually. Sometimes we get a little messy. Sometimes it gets a little. It's hard.
It's so hard and it's so messy, you know. And this was really something that was really clear to me. It's the reason why I came to Catholic Psych. When a little over 2 years ago, my son died from suicide. He was in the Army, and he just came home for Christmas break, and he didn't share his struggle with us. And, you know, he traveled back to his AIT job in Virginia, and he died from suicide. And I could not accompany him. I did not have the tools to see I could see he was in distress, but I had all kinds of different confusion about how to help him. And I did over spiritualize. I totally spiritually bypassed everything I tried to do to comfort him, had a spiritual tone. And that was really unhelpful. And so that's what brought me to Catholic Psych more than 2 years ago, was to figure out, okay, will is in the hands of our Lord, and we will talk about how true that is where we are in our particular mission, carrying on, with what has been revealed to us through the Sacred Heart of Jesus, that we can trust him. But I have a lot more children, that I need to understand how to accompany and to enter into their experience where they are. I did not know how to do that before. I just became afraid.
Well, I mean, it's just devastating on a whole level. It's unfathomable, and I'm really so sorry that that's happened. And I wasn't sure if it was going to come up today in our conversation or not. And I'm glad you brought it up, because I really do think it's another depth of who you are as a person, what you have to offer, the pain and suffering you've gone through, and the story that you're left to make sense of here. Obviously with the Holy Spirit's guidance.
Yes.
And so you have this tremendous depth of experience, of pain that you've suffered, and of hope that you offer, because you've gone through such a stretch of different human emotion and pain and experience. And yet here you are, still believing in God's promise, still carrying on with hope. And you are really a witness of hope, and a missionary of the incarnation. In this mission of Catholic Psych, what we're doing now to bring that to more people.
Yes.
you are more capable
Yes.
and positioned to do that
Mhm.
than had those things not happened.
I'm so glad you brought that up. And when we look through and we see, like, okay, the Sacred Heart of Jesus was revealed to Saint Margaret Mary Alacoque, and what was she struggling against at the time? Jansenism, right?
Mm,
And then we look through and we see, like, okay, Saint Faustina, JP2, Saint Alphonsus Liguori, like, who am I missing? So many people. Even like Father Chris Alar, who's with the Marians now. I can't remember the name, but his message of divine mercy after suicide. I mean, we all have a part to play, and that's part of my son's mission, is to
mm.
show how much each person matters in this mission right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's huge. And yeah, so we have the Sacred Heart again, this devotion bringing us to the sort of front edge of the humanity of Christ, that Christ enters totally into our humanity.
Yeah.
And he takes on all things but sin. So he's like us in all these ways. He knows all the dimensions of our experience,
Yeah.
and he's felt all of these different facets of emotion. And he's lost tremendous loss. He's grieved tremendous grief. He's felt the frustration. And I mean, I think about how his friend Lazarus dies,
Yeah.
and he's like pushed to the point of grief so deeply that he's like, not this time.
Mm-mm.
And we can't all raise somebody from the dead, and he got to do that.
Yeah.
But it meant he was pushed. He went so far down into the human experience of grief.
Yeah.
And then, I love how the Chosen TV show beautifully portrayed too the grief that Christ must have felt when his cousin John was killed.
Mm-hmm.
And then that too is like, that was, the first time we saw that without, and he didn't go and raise him from the dead, because he accepted that was God's will for that time and the story as it was unfolding. And there was like the fullness of this human experience.
Right.
And, the disappointment, the frustration of the people who were not listening to him,
Mm-hmm.
and even his own apostles, even his own disciples, when they just didn't get it. So God wants us to know how close he is to us,
Mm-hmm.
and how he's with us in all of these human experiences. And you mentioned a couple of times spiritual bypassing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the way I look at it and talk about it is it's almost scandalous to think that God would get that messy.
Right.
So it's easier for us to think that, well, God must be way out there, and that's super clean, pure,
Mm-hmm.
beatific vision, clarity of illumination and light and perfection.
Right.
And so if we want to be with God, like, we have to go out there.
Right.
So let's ignore the humanity messiness. Let's not the tears, not the fights, not the anger, not the disappointment, not the frustration. Let's go to the place. If we want to be with God, we're going to go out into that clean purity.
Right.
And then it's like, we're not getting it. Like, we can't go there.
No.
No matter how hard we try and pretend like all this stuff isn't real or isn't happening, we won't actually get there.
Right.
So that's why he had to come here.
Yeah.
So he enters into where we are so that we can be with God, even in our messiness, even in all of this perfection, all of this imperfection.
Yeah. And that is just, that is what we are doing here now, because the message is trust. It's one of trust. We can trust him. We don't have to, Jansenism was wrong. We can't be pure and perfect and holy in order to receive him in Holy Communion. We need him to heal us, to be a part of the mission,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, the beautiful thing is, because we started in this place of this humanity, the saints who show us how to be perfect, how to actually be perfect, it's like the dimension of human perfection is so human. And it's the coolest thing to really think about the saints, to really read their writings, to really follow their examples and see how gritty, normal,
Yeah.
like how much, like some of them had attitude, some of them played jokes, some of them, like I love how Therese
Mm.
and Francis, by the way, both of them had their special favorite, and John Paul too, their favorite desserts.
Yeah.
Like, how awesome is that? Therese, John Paul II, and St. Francis all are like, it's documented what their favorite pastry was.
Right. Is it true that Father Benedict Groeschel was particular about his eggs?
Oh, gosh, yeah. But Father Benedict was particular about a lot of things. And he had a lot of opinions, and he let a lot of people know what they are. And I hope to God he's a saint someday, because that'll bring grittiness to a whole nother level of showing how beautiful that human path is.
Yes.
And that's going to be the Jersey City flavor of human saintliness.
Yeah.
But it's, so we have to stop getting away from this. And this comes back to that initial concern you brought up. And it's like, okay, so we are in the position as mentors, entering into the brokenness and suffering and difficulties and challenges that other people are experiencing. And we need to lead actually with vulnerability.
Right.
And I don't mean, again, in the context of a particular conversation with a particular client. It might not serve their needs in that moment
Right.
to quote unquote lead with our vulnerability. But as a field, as a narrative about helpers,
Yes.
and this is why I love Henry Nouwen's idea of the wounded healer.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, this was kind of Jungian as an archetype, but we have this wounded healer archetype where it's like we're not entering in to help people as if we're some kind of pure perfection of health and then we can swoop in to save the day. We're following the leader who didn't do that either.
Right.
And actually saved us by entering into the pain and the suffering completely. And we can enter into the pain and suffering, and we cannot pretend, and we can't pretend, because it's not true that we have the perfection of God in his divinity.
Yeah.
So we have to be what we are.
Right.
And we can have the sort of purity, quote unquote, of truth, which is like, actually, this is who I am. And I've made mistakes, and I'm more than anything, I've been the recipient of God's mercy. Therefore, I have the story of mercy to share with you.
That's right.
And now maybe I can even be a channel, an instrument of mercy, and I can walk with you and help you receive it as well.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. Yeah. I wanted to ask you if it'd be okay if I shared this one quote from the Context of Holiness, because I think it's really important and applicable. But he says, this is Father Mark Foley. He says, even though I believe that by the grace of God, I am not the man I was 35 years ago, for I can honestly say that much emotional healing has taken place in my heart. Nevertheless, during times of stress, when my old fears and neurotic compulsions well up within me in all of their savage intensity, I feel nothing has changed. I say to myself, when will I ever be rid of this fear? Once I could accept the answer, never, I felt a great weight taken off my shoulders, for I was released from the impossible goal of trying to become someone other than myself. Working on yourself can be an insidious mask of self-hate, for it makes you feel that there is something wrong with you until you are healed. And I just think that that's, Saint Therese, she really kicked off, well, actually, I guess Saint Mary Margaret Mary Alacoque kicked everything off with Jesus in the Sacred Heart. But she has just been such a patroness for this pathway. She was up against so much. And so.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so that's The Context of Holiness by Father Mark Foley is about the life of Saint Therese, and it gets into the nitty-gritty of her life and how she was a walking ball of neurotic anxiety and nerves, and obviously it was partly healed throughout her life, but the way that he reflects on it is so beautiful, to see that. And what a scary thing. I would imagine that triggers people. Like some people listening to it, it's like, well, what do you mean? You have to accept that it'll never change and go away.
Yeah.
Wait, so that sounds pretty despairing, but it's I think we go deeper than that. That's the illusion, is to think we're supposed to become these sort of plastic holy card versions of humans, but we're always going to deal with anxieties in the way that our minds work. We're always going to deal with all of those imperfections coming up, temptations coming up. And it's not about clearing the deck of anything that feels messy. It's about how we deal with the messiness.
To just really just see that when we bring our frailty to our Lord, he is so pleased in that, and just the ability to really at the end, I think what Father Mark Foley is saying is like just to be able to endure yourself, really, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what we just recently did a podcast, an episode with Father Columba, who is from the CFRs. So he was talking about Father Benedict too, and he always used to say, "Yeah, just you have to get comfortable. Just do your lousy best." It's like just be okay with it. It's lousy. It's gonna be okay. If that's the best you can do, it's great. It's your lousy best.
That's right.
And that's it. So it's not even, so then sharing the darkness of our past, like the story brings people in, and it's like great. It's a great strength to have courage to actually open up your weaknesses. And it's a beautiful thing. It's the Holy Spirit that gives you the courage to do that. And it's where God's power is made perfect. It's in our weakness. It's where his strength becomes clear. Amen. So it's, if we could lead more with vulnerability, I think the world would be a better place. If the help, if the leadership, if, even in sort of structures of hierarchy, it's like, we have to be more real. And the more of a position of authority or the power differential that we're in, we should be more responsible for leading with truth and reality of who we really are.
Yeah. And that's where we always have to remember, like, am I doing this for me so that I feel like I'm holy enough to walk up for communion? Or am I doing this because I love Jesus? And right. It's like, I don't understand what's happening. I don't really have all of this proof that God exists, but I choose to trust and just bring what I have.
Yeah, amen. And so, I think we probably could do a whole nother episode just on dealing with grief and losing your son. I think that's such a monumental topic. And just for listeners to know, we'll put some links in the resources in the show notes. If you've struggled with any of that stuff, if suicidality, or if you've lost someone to suicide, I just did a series with Redbird Ministries. They did a whole course on grieving the loss of suicide, so we'll link to that as well. And but I think because of the narrative in the church in the course of history, coming from the same context that brought us Jansenism, also brought us this idea that, well, suicide is murder and it's a grave sin and it's mortal sin, and so people are not in heaven if they commit suicide. It's like, man, we've come a long way, haven't we?
Oh my goodness, we were accompanied in such a beautiful way by our priests here in Helena, and I just can't say enough good about all of them. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that's good. Well, what's next for you? What are you hoping for, working on, pointing towards?
I'm working on a forgiveness course that I'll post up on LinkedIn when I get it done with Jack Beers. And I still have my integrated step parent hope that people will start reaching out to me who are step parents who are struggling. I really want to continue to work on that. I think it's important, really important. And
That was your capstone, right?
Yes.
You're going to be working with, yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, the resources for step
Yeah.
parents, um, all sorts of different family
Yes.
dynamics that are so
Yeah.
messy
Any kind of irregular
to be
family,
thrown in the mix.
any kind of, yeah, anything like that. So definitely book an intake call with me if you're struggling there. But what I'm most excited about is seeing Dr. Kraft at the summit.
Oh yeah, we got the summit
I
coming up.
cannot
That's right, June
wait.
20th to 22nd.
Yeah, I just hope everything goes well.
Yeah, yeah. So people, I don't think, well, we, it depends on when this episode comes out, but we have June 20th to
Yeah.
22nd is the Summit of Integration in Madison, New Jersey, right outside of
Mm,
Newark. And so I'll put a link in the notes as well, CatholicPsych.com/summit. And that we'll have virtual tickets available for remote
mhm.
access as well as the in-person tickets. Obviously, we hope as many people come in person,
Yes.
but not everybody can make the trip to Newark, so we still want you to participate and join in. We've got Matt Marr also, who's going to be providing playing a private acoustic concert, and this kind of conversation is going to be
Oh,
happening
yeah.
the whole
Yes.
time. You might be doing a little breakout,
Yes.
right? Did we talk about
Yes.
that?
We'll do some.
So we'll see who a couple of partners are going to be doing breakout sessions, and then we'll have some
Yeah.
keynotes. So super excited to see you in person
Yes.
and see you there at the summit and all of our listeners as well. So I think that'll about wrap up our time for today. But I really appreciate your vulnerability and sharing so much of what you're doing, and also your heart for this ministry and for this work of accompaniment and mentorship. And yeah, just can't wait to see what God is doing through your
Yeah.
yes.
And yours. Thank you, Dr. Greg.
All right, thank you. And to all our listeners, I hope this has blessed you. Again, if you have anything that's stirred up from any of this, please check out our notes for links. We're here to provide consultation. We have free consultations available if you feel like you might need some help. Maybe we're not the right fit, but we'll be happy to guide you and point you in the right direction. If not, otherwise, till next time, God bless
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks for listening to the Being Human podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode and want to help us spread the word and hear more, please head over to iTunes, leave us a review, and subscribe, as it really helps us to get our content out to more people. Be sure to listen next time as I take you deeper into what it means to be human. If you want more free content and information about what we do at the Catholic Psych Institute, head on over to CatholicPsych.com. God bless you.